really was a microcosm of like what the industry has been for me, and I didn't know it was going to be that way because it was an educational institution. And the grad class that I had, the acting grad class that I had, was one of the most inclusive and diverse grad acting classes you'll ever see. Right. If I show you guys a picture of my grad acting class, that shit is like unusual.
That was a great year for a lot of people I know. That time at University of Texas, like I didn't even know any.
Great people, but like the people who were in, like I just had some conversations with some of my cohort. We laugh about it now. They were like, Michael, you were always in that administration's in the office, like going off, yelling at somebody about being.
Yes.
I was always being like, y'all are not. Let me tell you about this one really quickly, and then I'm talking too much. But I'm gonna say this one thing. This sums up who I am, what I stand for, and how I don't fucking play when it just comes to like the underdog. One of the reasons that I decided to go to UT was, at the time, the acting program was headed by a Black woman, Fran Dorn. I could like write her a love letter every day for the rest of my life. And she is how I met Meryl Streep. She was in Meryl's grad acting class at Yale, had Meryl come to UT. We had lunch with her. She did a seating chart and sat me next to Madame Streep herself. Like, y'all, when we get offline, I'll show you pictures and everything. Anyway, Fran was the reason I went to UT. A Black woman heading an acting program is not usual. And she is a genius, brilliant actor, really just amazing. Fran convinced me. Fran was the reason that I went there. She wouldn't stop bothering me until I said yes. So a part of like UT's website really touted this like commitment to diversity and inclusion. It was all over their website, like all over it. And I was fed up that we were doing a production of Love's Labor's Lost. All of the pairings were interracial. All like, it's all these Black and brown people in there. I myself am Black and brown. Like, this is just this beautiful, colorful, wonderful production. The woman who played the princess was my classmate, who is a blonde white woman. And they decided to make the production poster just her. This like really like feminine, coy, like white woman-ness, like the image of that production. And that was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because they were always just doing shit like that. They like really erased us in a lot of ways, like quite literally visually erased us from a lot of things. And I like never got a lead in main stage productions until like my last year. I was cast in a role that I would never be cast in otherwise. I was mad. And the head of the entire theater and dance department was a white guy from the Midwest. His first year was our grad acting class's first year. When he came in, there was like a lot of changes he wanted to implement and stuff. And it was just tough. I scheduled a meeting with him through his secretary. I was like, I need to have a talk with you. I'm very disappointed by some decisions that you are signing off on and how it's affecting me as a person of color in this program. We need to talk. He responded, okay, yes. At the time, I had a white woman ally. She was a graduate playwriting student, Diana Grisanti. I want to shout her out. I'll never forget her. I told her about the meeting. She said, I would love to, if I'm remembering correctly, she said, I would love to attend that meeting with you as an ally and in solidarity. I would like to be in the room.
That's beautiful.
To make sure that you feel protected, and like, I want to echo your sentiments so he doesn't think that it's just from you, because I actually agree it's not okay. When he found out about that, he wanted to have another faculty member in the meeting as well. So it was like him and Susan Mickey, I think was the woman. She was like, and so I walked into that meeting with a printout from every single page on the website that had the word diversity in it, and I highlighted it. And I said, I gave it to him. I was like, I want to let you know that the reason I decided to go here was because of this. And I handed him a stack of papers. I said, you guys said that you are committed to diversity for me to feel included and at home. And I'm not feeling that at all. I've not felt it. And I want to know what your thoughts are about that and why. Why don't I feel this way? Why did you sign off on this poster? Why do I consistently feel unseen, undermined? Why am I underutilized? No one wants to work with me. I've been labeled as this difficult person because I'm constantly like
having to fight for yourself.
White supremacy is reigning supreme here, and you guys think that you're not participating in it because you're like these liberals who like we're in Austin and like what, you know, all of that to say, I gave him the papers. He was like gobsmacked. He didn't know what to say. He was stuttering. And then Diana Grisanti's ass, we were like going in on him. It was like me and Diana, we were going back and forth. And at the end, I was like, so what are you going to do about this? This man, every time he saw me in the hallway after that, he used to, Michael, how are you? He used to go out of his way to ask me how I'm doing, be so nice. He was so scared. All those people were so scared about me just calling out like the shit that they were doing to me and so all of my other, my fellow marginalized people.
It's oof. When I hear that, like I can't,
Many of us have these stories. Christina, I know you have that same story a million times. John, I know, even like AA, you, Keith, we all have those stories. We all of us, no matter like what privileges we hold, we also like all of us in this conversation right now have certain privileges and also exist in the margins in certain areas. And so we understand like what it means to be in like a position of power, so to speak, or to hold a certain privilege. We have these experiences where we are constantly like facing adversity for things that we can't control, for like these bullshit, like the lines that have been drawn by someone who says I'm better than you.
And just institutions as a whole, like the country, and how it's broken down to these factions. The walls that we face that we need to break down while also dealing with those, like I would much rather deal with someone who's just like, I don't think you're a human being. I don't want you to have this. I do not like you. Goodbye. Because it's so clear and transparent, as opposed to this, well, I really only like the good blacks, and I only really like the good brown people. And so, like, here's one of you, and you're light-skinned, so this is fine. Oh, you're ethnically ambiguous. Cool, cool, cool. And the and the that's not even going into the intersections of sexuality and gender and how much of that is erased. And it's so, I could speak on volumes of it, but in this moment, in this time, and that the fact that I am 33 years old and I am still cracking out fucking just deep roots of like, oh, here's every single fucking way that I have been erased and have tried to like pass and survive, because that is what we're taught, especially when you are in the trenches of socioeconomic hardships. Like, fuck that, man. Like, cool. I am a poor, this is the first time in my life, simply because of unemployment and the fact that I was able to get some good gigs last 2 years, that I can go, okay, cool. I can breathe for a second. And that is ridiculous, whether I was an artist or not. And the fact that that has to be proven, or that we should be grateful for these scraps, is wild, or that we have to be a certain way to get any kind of clout of, well, you're not queer enough for this, and it's like, it astounds me, and just to own it, to feel this part of like, yes, let's do this podcast, and I love it, and yes, I am a queer fat babe, and my own reckoning of, no one needs to know this, but I like being transparent. Cool. I've dated primarily friggin' white cis men, if I'm looking at it, and going, sure. But knowing, like, no, I've dated lots of people, but where does the majority focus? What are we taught? What are we clinging on to for survival as opposed to thriving? And it's, Yeah.
I mean, one of the reasons I do love you, Christina, and your work is that you talk about body positivity in a way that isn't, it's as poetic as it also is just very human. and empathetic. And I've been a person who's like walked around like my size my whole life. Recently, I decided to get like a bit healthier, but because that complex was just built into me by society and everything around me, and especially because I chose this job and this industry, like I don't feel any different in this industry than I ever was. And I think it's going to take a long time for me to learn how to like really love myself and accept myself. But you know, the way that fat people are treated in our industry is fucking lunacy.
I have two fat parents who even like have, they in turn, like even me, I don't live in a fat body. I never have. I've been expounding a little bit, like, but I hear the way my mom and dad talk about fatness and the relationship between fatness and health. And I'm constantly being like, okay, mama and daddy, but you know, like, your doctor is the one who gets to say that to you and like determine that, but like I don't get to tell you your experience. I understand that, but I do want to highlight some of the things that I'm hearing that just don't even sound right, coming like landing on my ears right now. I keep conflate health with weight, like a number on the scale, and we have got to stop doing that.
You know what? I'm not going to brag, but I'd like to say that I'm living proof of that. I'm by no means like a decathlon Olympian in any shape or form, but my body, after all of the changes I've made to my health, is still completely healthy. My knees, my feet, and I've lived 25 years in a fat body. So to anybody whose doctors are telling them, like, you'll die in 2 weeks, like fuck you, just a little bit.
All doctors say that though. That's the thing.
Another thing though is, even if, you know, I mean, as a disabled person, even as someone whose, you know, body isn't quote unquote healthy or normal or anything, you know, that folks would expect, you know, society has this sense of looking at us and my community, you know, that there's something wrong with us. I actually didn't even know I was disabled. So I have cerebral palsy. It's like a mildish case. I had like surgery to lengthen my heel cords when I was like 4. And my parent, like, no one told me that I had CP. They just were like, your legs are different. And I was like, okay. And it came from a good place of not wanting me to feel marginalized or like I wasn't quote unquote normal. When we do that, when we live in a society that does that teaches us that to be normal means to deny literally the reality of your own body, of who you are.
I want to hug you right now.
Yeah, I like to do the around the computer thing where it's like,
it lands on me.
Yes, group hug. The group hug is real.
It's the community. It's the community that we're missing. And this idea, and Christina, you were saying this of, you know, not being, you know, queer enough, disabled enough, whatever. That's something that like haunted me, you know, for such a long time. You know, feeling like, you know, I wasn't a part of this community. So what does it mean? Like, did I really have CP? You know, like, but what does it mean to be normal? You know, what does any of it mean? And the problem is society, obviously, like, burn it to the ground, like we were saying, you know. It's just there is no normal. We're all different. We're all doing our things. And if you're healthy in your way to be healthy, or even if you're not healthy, if you're just yourself and you're living your life, like this whole quality of life thing with COVID, you know, people saying that they're gonna, you know, decide who lives and who dies. Who's to say? Who's to judge? You're not, you know, how can you?
Oh, thank you for the whole loop. I'll probably share it in the next couple of days, but I've been trying to really just focus my thoughts as being a queer, Black, Afro-Latina woman of color who is fat, who is the oldest of a poor family, like all of these identities and being a witch, primarily being a bruja, and like what those tapping ins, that this timing is not lost on me. Sure, at any moment in history that we have seen, there is always a time to do better. There's always a time to reckon, to do whatever. But particularly the last 3 months, we are in a global pandemic, with not even an inch close to a vaccine. If this is not the time to fucking burn shit down and get brutal in the way of honesty, radical honesty, and radical reckoning, then there will be no other time. I truly believe that. then what are you waiting for? I don't want to hear you say anything then. Like, if you are actively wanting to find that balance of celebrating what we could have, trying to survive, and also wanting more for yourself.
And the one thing I will say is there's many ways to do this. And I've been seeing, you know, a lot of narratives like you have to go out and protest, you have to be doing this, you have to be doing that. And people don't have that luxury, you know, like I'm a disabled person, I'm living with older parents. Like this is just, I can't get out there and do that, but there's other things you can do. No one's better than another.
There is a quote that Michael R. Jackson actually said in the LA Times that I think it's sort of the summary for me of how I feel about the platform I've created for myself. And it addressed a question he was asked about how he sees the future of theater after COVID-19. And that's actually a question I ask at the end of this. So whenever this ends, maybe it'll be shortly. I mean, maybe it fucking won't, you know? Like Johnny was like, we're gonna be out of here by 6. And I was like, definitely. I definitely don't want to edit that much footage. This is what Michael R. Jackson said. The COVID-19 pandemic has ruthlessly exposed all long-standing, pre-existing inequities in our world. It's almost like we've wandered into the kitchen late at night, flipped on the light switch, and found every surface covered in roaches. But instead of skittering to hide, the roaches just linger and stare back defiantly. So whenever we are able to gather together again, I would like to see theater that is willing to ask more pointed, imaginative, theatrical, and potentially self-implicating questions, but the nature, history, and complexity of this infestation. For me, I feel like the roach. I felt like the roach for years, man. And there are all these people, even Michael R. Jackson. I saw Halfway Bitches Go Straight to Heaven back in December, and I went up to him at intermission. He probably can't possibly remember this, but at the same, I was just like, I was sort of a fan girl at the time. Did I embarrass myself? Maybe, possibly, not so much like absolutely, but
it's impossible for you to embarrass yourself, baby. I keep telling you, you are a nugget of pure love, joy, and
that was my childhood nickname. That's so funny.
You are a nugget of like absolute delight, and I'm not just saying that because, you know, I'm not a bullshitter. I don't know.
No.
You know, like from the moment that I met you, you have this smile that is infectious. Like your heart is visible. I feel like I can see your heart through your chest. You are so kind and bountiful. Like you've always wanted to give space. You are inviting, and I don't ever want you to think that you're anytime you share anything that you feel with anyone. I mean, I can't speak on behalf of everyone, so I will use I statements. Anytime
they all fucking hate me.
Anytime that you ever expressed your sentiments to me about anything that you felt, whether it's something that I have participated in myself or like sharing something that you've seen of someone else's work, it has always been very well received and warmly welcomed because I enjoy your presence. And I hope that anytime that you are wondering or feeling any slight amount of self-consciousness as a result of like sharing your emotions or your sentiments or your reality with someone, I invite you to push against that, because I have always enjoyed any conversation I've ever had with you.
Wow.
Because you are such a delight, and I hope that you will not ever apologize for who you are, because you are a gift to anyone who has the privilege of knowing you or meeting you or sharing space and air with you. So as you finish this story that I've so rudely interjected, I just, you know, I feel compelled to say that to you because I keep hearing you apologize or talking about embarrassment. And it's like, Keith, you are literally a delight. You brought all of these souls together.
Hello.
The magnificent human you are full of love and grace. Love you so much.
You're amazing. I love you too. I'm hugging you right through this fucking screen. Right? Basically, all that story was to say is that I'm speaking to people that I would not speak to. Christina's another great example. Hardly know you, and yet I feel such a kinship and a connection and an alignment with you, and I'm able to look at people and have conversations that I just would not have had it not been for opening up the truth of these inequities.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people are feeling that. There's a lot of people being like, no, you can't do Zoom plays. Well, guess what? I'm too early in my career to not do anything. What am I? There's, if you want to like just chill, that's another thing. Or like you can, like, everybody, whatever you do, you win during this, because this pandemic is an excuse for everybody. This is some wild shit. Like, I don't know you, I don't know what you need, but what I need is to keep pursuing. That's a fucking Shakespeare quote. Pursue, pursue, pursue. Like, that is real.
Tomorrow and tomorrow.
The one thing I hope that comes out of this, and that I think we're all understanding, you know, better as a society, I hope, who the hell knows, is just this need for connection that I feel like folks took for granted. And I hope, you know, Keith, you were talking about like what will the industry look like at the end of this. I hope what this has taught us more than anything is that we all need connection, and we all can and should connect to each other, because as you know, Michael, as you said, like we've all, you know, had these experiences in different ways. You know, we all know what it's like to, you know, be in the targeted community. Like we have all had these experiences, and we're people, and we need to just stop arguing about who is a person, what does that mean, who lives, who dies, all this stuff, and just connect with each other. And I don't know, sometimes you need to strip everything away, right? It goes back to this idea of what happens when you don't have anything, and you know, necessity breeds invention. We have been stripped away from everything. What is there? You know, shining the light on, there's the roaches. What is this going to look like? So I just hope that we take this, what we're feeling now, what I'm feeling, because I can't speak for everyone, which is this need for connection and to connect to people, and put it into the art, and put it into, you know, making theater that doesn't even look like what theater usually looks like, you know, or used to look like. What does that even mean, you know?
We're on the precipice of that too. You can tell, like in 2019, we had Fairview and A Strange Loop and Behind the Sheets in one fucking year. That speaks to how far we've come, and that's before we realized how vulnerable we are as a planet.
I kind of wanted to just jump in on some of the stuff AA was saying, because I think the saddest moment that I've had in quarantine, and not the moment that made me like the angriest. There have been a lot of moments that have made me like angry. There have been a lot of moments that have made me frustrated. But like the moment that I think I was the saddest was I was on like oh man, now I have to get all these theater names right. Roundabout, when for 72 Miles to Go, they did like a community thing where like it was like essentially like a talk back, but like Zoom, but like a Zoom like talk back led by facilitators, and they have like a lot of facilitators, and like, you know, like that's like not usually my scene, but like I was like, okay, like let's do this. Like I'm like, you know, like I was like both supporting like the show, supporting like people that were like working with the thing. And I remember there was this moment where my room was like me, another Black guy who is also queer, and then I want to say 5 white women between the ages of like 40 and 70. And so I was like about 72 miles to go. So like already like I'm on like some level of alert, but it ended up not being what I expected. But I think the reason that it ended up not being that, or not even the reason, but there was this moment when one of these women was like, oh, well, you know, it was essentially like, how does this play resonate with you right now? And I mean, like, it's like, well, it's a play about a mother who can't see her family. No one can see their families unless they live with them right now. Therefore, like, this play resonates. But this one woman had clearly like just gone through some life upheaval, was like kind of newly like by herself. And then this happened. And she was like, I am so alone. And it was just this moment of like, just like this reckoning of like, that's like aloneness that's like aloneness in time. And like, I might not know what it's like to be alone, but I don't know what it's like to be alone over time. That is what is unique about this moment. I had a life, you know, like that is the thing that I do not know. And now I am alone. Like that is the thing that I will not know. And like, that is that's what I want to do with my theater. Not make people feel alone, but like kind of like the opposite of that.
Are you saying that that feeling of I don't feel alone is it because you are living with someone? Like, do you live with your partner?
I do live with my partner, but also like I've been in times in my life where I'm like I am by myself, but I do not have the sheer life history. I do not have the length of time to have lived multiple lives and suddenly find myself alone.
Right.
Like, and there's, I think, a certain sadness, because for me, the loneliness is new, it's novel, it might be difficult, but it's novel, and it's something that I, as a younger person, am able to kind of be like, well, this is a period of my life. Like, you know, this is a moment for me, you know, like, and whether or not that moment is something that I can pull myself out of, this is a moment for me. But to have lived long and well, and then find yourself on the precipice of something new, and you have no one to be with, that is the thing that I think that like theater can actually maybe help with, like can kind of like mirror back. And like that is part of like what I don't want to say excited, because I think that like, but like it's a sadness that is universal. I think that like one of the things that I've been dealing with a lot artistically is that I think a lot of I just read this Heathcliff Saunders article kind of was about the state of musical theater.
No!
That I am all sorts of about, and I think I'm also all sorts of about because I have noticed that like as a Black playwright, the plays that people are interested in are my plays that like speak very specifically and often like in very clear terms about Blackness, and not the ones where it is very messy and I'm talking about whiteness also. Like if I'm talking about whiteness, Blackness, and another thing, and it's complicated and you can't immediately align yourself in one way, like if you can't immediately say like whiteness is bad, or like if you can't immediately say like, well, you know, if you can't immediately do that, then people freak out and turn off.
I mean,
it becomes this thing about like, okay, are you interested in the Black body, or are you interested in like the Black life? And then you like kind of look around and you're like, are you interested in anyone's life, or are you interested in just like bodies doing things? And it seems to just be about bodies. I mean, you look at some of these plays and you're like, these are about like people going through the motions, and like even if I'm getting like some sort of internal thing, am I getting the messy internal thing, or am I getting the easy internal thing?
Right.
They want the packageable thing. It needs to be packageable, and it needs to be palatable, and it needs to be something that they can understand. They want you to write about your identity in a way that they can understand and take and say, oh, isn't it wonderful that we, you know, had a play about folks with disabilities or queer people or trans people.
That's why I love A Strange Loop, because A Strange Loop is like the messiest of theater I've ever seen to win a Pulitzer Prize, and the mess is stunning. That's the joy of the show. That connected to me as a fat person at that time, because I was at the heaviest I was in my life. I had some like late night with Seth Meyers bullshit that, because they did not get clothes in my size, and it was pretty clear, like I could, you know, Christina, you can read a fucking room when it comes to this stuff. Like it was clear that they were like, this isn't gonna work. So they cut what they had planned for me. I spent a day learning a rap song by this dude, and it was gonna be the three of us, this rapper, me, and another person, and we were gonna go on Late Night with Seth Meyers, and we were rehearsing it. I learned everything, and I studied this man's movements, and basically my entryway when I saw Strange Loop was at that experience of being shut away. And A Strange Loop is a lot more than about fatness, as I like to say.
But
it's about the Black
encompassing. It's all it all holds weight. No pun intended. Like it's a gravity. Please continue.
I have no context for any of this.
You gotta read it. This guy, he deals with everything. He talks about fatness. He talks about
Tyler Perry
being gay. He talks about Tyler Perry.
What happened with this late night? With
you couldn't perform. They cut you out because they couldn't dress you.
I don't think he understood that. Like I was heavier.
The musical.
It's not understanding. It's having the respect and doing your fucking job of, hi, I'm bringing you on. Great. What are your measurements? Are you providing your own costume? What allergies do you have? basic fucking courtesies that you give to everyone else, rather than assuming that everyone is a thin sample size within some kind of margin, the same way we all assume that, oh, just being thin or white passing is going to give you an immediate access. Like that, no. White should not be the neutral standpoint. The neutral standpoint should just simply be human.
Writing that person an email, or I'm gonna figure out that person's contact information. I'm gonna let that person know that they did a complete disservice to the production, and also it's fucked up and they didn't do their job, and I am gonna write something.
When you are fat and the constant unlearning of simply to just be able to describe someone as opposed to putting a negative context to it, I am fat. That is literally a description.
Yeah, and that's a whole other conversation. Like, that has become a pejorative. I fucking hate that people, like, it's a descriptor. I don't like black as a pejorative in a lot of times. Like, people dance around and whisper black. People dance around and whisper able-bodied or disabled or like the
just
way
let it be.
You know what a person's position and viewpoint on something is by the way in which they use the word. If they apologize for the use of a descriptor, like if you can't even say fat or apologize for saying fat, I have no qualms or problems about using the word fat, not as a fat person, because I understand my relationship to fatness, and I understand that I am not someone who views it as it is not bad. Thing. It is an actual, in the same way that yellow, when you're describing the color yellow, you don't apologize for describing the color yellow.
Right.
Neutral idea.
Or when a white person says black, like
it's exhausting because it's the constant having to defend the right that you exist, as opposed to people just mind your business. And if you don't like something, look the other way. And it's very simple. If it's not hurting you directly, are you dying? Are you hurt? Is your life under attack? Because
I think people think that it is.
Yeah, they really fucking do.
It's really wild. It's so wild. And to be looked at as a burden, like, motherfucker, I'm just walking down the street. That is it. And you hate me because I am walking down the street in my fat, ethnically ambiguous body, but you're gonna, here are the gays, and then the audacity to fetishize me at the same fucking glance. Like,
oh God,
okay, motherfuckers, okay. And before I forget, because, when you were talking about being able to take all of our wonderful things that make us different and that people want to tokenize, but you have to be able to put it in a package. When thinking about that, even then it's not enough. And particularly, I didn't have a chance to do this earlier, in Behind the Sheet, singular, and it's Charlie Yvonne Simpson, and she is my girl. I'm literally in her home right now. And knowing, even with that, and being able to present a world, present actual history that happened, that people refuse to reckon with, and that, great, if you want to make it presentable of, it's a black suffering story, so we've packaged it enough, and that wasn't the thing. But if we want to look at it that way, that it still wasn't enough, because but is the white man really a villain? Is he a villain? Because he represents the fucking systemic racism that this country has built upon and continues to erase. So, like, fuck your palatable kind of package.
I did Astronaut play out of town for like a reading series in Florida. With a fantastic, like, the theater company, great people. The idea of the play is essentially that, we kind of get to this place where there are these 4 students who are trying to go to space. The one that gets chosen is the only white man on stage. They choose him because of his look, and like there are other reasons. But like it's a clear example of just like the ways in which like racism goes said and unsaid, like in America.
Yep.
At the end, this guy is is so stupid, and you watch him for 15 minutes at the end of the play fail, essentially. Like, it is a massive failure because he does not belong there. And he realizes he does not belong there too late because he has never had a chance to have someone say, like, you don't belong everywhere. During the talk back at this reading, we have, like, it's like almost it's not an entirely white room, but it's like mostly white people. And the director's like, well, okay, like, why do we think he's the one that ended up being chosen to go into space? And it was truly as though I watched people's heads spin 360 degrees around trying to rationalize a reason other than racism for this man to do things. Like, I mean, like truly, like, they were like, at one point, like, he like makes like a cardboard box helmet, and everyone's like, that's dumb. Like, everyone's like, that's stupid. And they're like, well, he put in extra work. So it was, but these are the things people will wait in order to protect their safety, their intellectual, like their whiteness. Let's go with whiteness. Let's go with whiteness. But also their privilege, they will find ways to completely reframe something so that they can, because, like, you see behind the sheet, like, if you think that man is anything other than the villain of that story, then you did mental gymnastics. Like, you did the pole vault, you stuck the landing.
Very toned down, palatable version of what actually happened.
Right.
I don't remember hearing the word nigger in that play.
Oh, no.
Nigger wasn't even, like, they didn't even say nigger, right?
No. Nope.
Okay, so that was another thing, and this is not at all even a slight against the playwright, because I knew what was. Let me tell you, I loved the show, and I was so moved, and having, like, the experience that most, if not all of us had, it was a very powerful performance, and once again another reminder of the atrocities of a period of enslavement and really the history of modern day Western medicine. It on the backs of
Black women
and cavities of Black people, quite literally, right? Just really quickly, the one thing I want to say that I think, as we're talking about, like the future of theater, and we've spoken a lot about the bodies on stage, which should be the humans and the lives on stage, and the infrastructures and administration and the powers that be that create. I think we really still need to push back and challenge the idea that a lot of this is, in addition to, like, administrative and institutional issues, a lot of the issues with theater that I have is the audience, like the audience of theater. The audiences are older, white, theater, like subscription holders, and like there's no access to a lot of people, like regardless of ethnicity, but just even like financially, it's expensive to see theater, to see.
Right. It's actually funny that you brought up somebody brought up Roundabout at some point, and I think Roundabout is really pivotal in creating the history of patronage as we know it today, because in the 70s they were the ones who found the hip rich white people who became the old people that come to theater today. Those are the people. So right now what's going to happen because of coronavirus is we're going to need to find a new demographic, because
thing is, like, this is all business, this is all money, this is an act, theater is a commodity, right? And so it's, at the end of the day, we're all artists and we all have a message to give. The way in which we're able to be given that platform is through business institutions, like, and finances are the bottom line, like the actual, the money that they're making. And unfortunately, it costs so much money to produce theater, which means it costs lots of money to experience it and be a theater goer. And so many people are left out of that. So that is already one barrier. And then also, even with all of these programs and discounts and stuff like that, I think that what the challenge and the charge that I make to theater makers as we're going forward, particularly those in the positions of power in like in the offices and the administration, we have got to figure out how to be more actively and ferociously making sure that we have an equally inclusive audience as we do, you know, the stories that we're telling, because I can't tell you how many times I've looked around in the audience and have been marginalized just as an audience member, and the experience in which, you know, theater is to be consumed live, and the audience is a part of the story.
It's an extension of it.
Things land differently, and if I, you know, a joke that might just be for me and meant for me from the playwright and stuff, like stuff that's for me specifically, and experiencing it being flipped on its head in a really negative way and exploited by people who are not like me, and consuming that at the same time. Like if I'm a lone voice in a sea, like a sea of whiteness, let's say, or rich, you know, fucking, you know, rich folks, whatever, that can be alienating in and of itself. And there really has got to be a much greater charge and movement in like the audience members of theater. That shit is one of the most exclusionary aspect, because I'm seeing a lot of different stories being told. I'm seeing a lot, you know, I'm seeing progress being made there, but like nobody who looks like me and my friends and my family, I'm not seeing those bodies in the seats.
And knowing that it has to be more than having these Broadway blackout nights or these like it's I love them. Yes, we should have things reserved for us, and also it has to be the norm to be able to have space for all of us to be here. This accessibility,
and it builds,
you know, that's there, so you don't get an old white woman at a talkback going, well, why didn't the slaves just have whiskey? Why didn't they just have whiskey to endure the pain of having been experimented on? And
because that happened,
literally happened.
And also, what does it mean that this is culture? This is why the plays are packageable, right? It's for this audience, this very white, rich audience. But if we're making them packageable for this white, rich audience, and that's dictating culture, what does that say about culture? What is, you know, what this? There's a wider responsibility here, you know, beyond like culture should be accessible to everyone. That's the whole point of culture. Why does it just have to be white culture? Why does it just have to be rich culture? And, you know, we like to pretend that like, okay, the theater's dying, you know, no one's going to see the theater. It's all film TV anyway, but like, listen, it's all white and it's all rich. Like it's all privilege, you know? Yeah. So
look at Euphoria. It's the most diverse show on HBO, and it's made by a white dude based on an Israeli show. It's basically like the Jewiest form of like outsourcing television, you know, like that is so inherently, that's like some Big Bang Theory bullshit. He found it in like another country and some guy was like, that's my shit, and he was like no, because he could.
I think too that like one of the things that like to get to the commerce of it also is that like, you know, you talk about changing the audience. One of the most insidious parts of the whole thing is that for a variety of reasons, because ticket prices are too high, like let's start there, but also the ways in which we try to solve that problem of ticket prices being too high. What we essentially do, and by we I'm talking about like the American theater at large, is when we want to have diverse audiences, we lower ticket prices, right? So what we're saying is that shows that are appealing to diverse audiences cannot make as much money, which is the standard bearer of what the thing like needs to do, as a show that does not appeal to diverse audiences. And simultaneously say that often Black people, we can go with people of color more generally, do not value art as much as whiteness or as white people do. And like, this is the insidiousness of how we have set up like a lot of these systems of like how we kind of like market, how we paper, how we kind of like go through what ticket prices are. Because if you look at like Broadway shows, you try so hard to not discount, because once you discount, the show is devalued, and once the show is devalued, it's only a matter of time before the show will not be able to run anymore, because the ticket price demand will go so low. So what does it say that for shows that star predominantly Black people, that star predominantly people of color generally, because I think it happens on a lot of shows that star Asian people as well, on shows that star Latinx people as well, what does it mean that we are immediately devaluing the price of the ticket, which is the thing that is supposed to give it its worth, instead of looking at ways to even out the ticket price generally, because the ticket price might be too high? Like, and what lessons are we teaching? Because then what you're saying is, you, like Black person who does not have access to the theater on a regular basis, or honestly, what we're actually saying is, you, like middle upper class Black person in America who does not have a history of the theater, because it is we can say localized, it is predominantly white, you know, we can say come up with a number of reasons, but like I know I growing up, like, theater, what is that? I had no concept of what theater was. So like you, like upper middle class Black person, you should not value this art form as much, because we need you to come through. So like, you know, like it's $20. Like, so this is not an experience for you to value. Therefore, like the art that's being put on stage is like, if you see yourself in it, like, don't worry, like doesn't matter that much. Like, that's crazy town.
That was
crazy
literally my introduction to theater. Literally, my introduction to theater was exactly what you just described. It is wow. Oh, wow.
And the thing is, this subscription, the business model that has run the theater since Roundabout, this is news to me that they were the ones who created this model. It doesn't work anymore. It's an open secret. I've worked in arts admin. Anyone who's worked in arts admin will tell you most theaters are running at a deficit. And the big question is, how are they going to make money now? How are they going to get new subscribers? What are they going to do? And honestly, this is pre-COVID. This was already happening. So I can't even, I hope to God that instead of trying to save the system, you know, and save the baby and try to find new subscribers, why don't we just throw it all out? Like,
we need to break the system. We gotta break that shit down in order for us to let go of that older audience. We need to focus on the mentorship of leading the next generation of Black people that are just gonna take the space that they've been made to dance on, because colloquially theater is for the upper class. That's how it was structured. It was always structured so that the king could sit in the back and watch a funny story about the other people. It's that otherism that is so problematic in the theater. And it's not a lot to ask for me to, you know, look at what I do. Just tell me to shut the fuck up for a while. I'll tolerate shutting the fuck up and listening with my ears. I have 2 holes in my head and 1 big fucking mouth that I could use all the time. It's not a big deal to close 1 of those holes. You still have 2 of them. Really another 2. It's just... It's so frustrating to me. I'm done being like fragile and sissy in this moment of time. It's over. It's
always
done.
Be sissy. Always be sissy.
Yes.
Always
I could be sissy, but not about racism. That's not where I'm gonna be a sissy. You don't want white people to be sissies. That's how white fragility was born. That's why I love Dave Chappelle.
And and in that statement of going like, cool, how can we appreciate the things that gave us more vocabulary, gave us more insight into things that perhaps we were blinded by, and to take white fragility and actually know that, no, this is weaponized guilt. This is weaponized guilt in such an insidious way. And Dave Chappelle, listen, I'm going to watch your old shit with fucking Rick James, but your new shit I can't, because you are just for Black men and you need to be for Black trans women.
You're for Black straight men.
Women. You need to be for that. And if you're not, like, all right, cool, but I can't fuck with you.
He hasn't acknowledged he hasn't acknowledged how problematic that was, and he still stands behind it. And again, I think that's one of the difficult things about, like, when we call people out, the role that ego plays in learning a lesson, because a lot of times when people are called out, called in is the new way of phrasing it to be more palatable, whatever. But like the hardest part about learning a lesson for all of us, you know, is the role that ego plays when someone says, hey, that's not okay, and here's why. People listen to defend instead of listening to learn, or, you know, and so that's the hardest part about breaking through to anybody as it pertains to anything. I think, like, that's the biggest part, I think, and I'm no psychologist at all, but I think it would be, that's the community that we should look into, and the psychology behind all of this, if we can really figure out how to break through to people and like the relationship that ego plays in all of this. Because oftentimes I think, you know, the reason people aren't seeing the humanity and all that is because we just want to be right, and we don't want to be we don't want to hear that what we're doing is problematic and dangerous to certain people.
Exactly. That's sort of the thing, though, when you tell me don't be too apologetic. That's the opposite side of the spectrum, is Dave Chappelle's problem, right? There's got to be a balance where you can examine yourself.
Again, the thing is, like, we think of racism or any ism, any sort of discrimination or xenophobia, whatever. We think that the only way, a lot of times, we think that the only way it exists is if it's evil, if it's like the intention behind it is to do harm. But oftentimes we participate in these systemic forms of oppression in ways that are well-intentioned.
Yeah.
That's the conversation that we need to continue having, and like and I think that's what this movement is attempting to do, is like, okay, like, yes, calling someone a racial epithet and screaming go home or whatever, like, that is a form of racism or whatever ism, but like, how do we participate in the systems that are oppressing, you know, X, Y, and Z people in ways that we're not intentionally like trying to do harm? And that's the hardest part, because again, when we acknowledge that and bring it to people's consciousness, again, there's this need to defend. And it's not about babysitting and the fragility and like coddling people, but I think if we can really advocate for resilience in learning, you know, you must be resilient as you're learning these lessons. You must not take everything so personally. You must figure out how to nurse yourself and figure out how to coddle yourself as you are understanding and learning about the ways in which something that you participated in caused harm to someone else. You may not do it, you know. I've caused harm to people so many times in ways that I didn't mean to. That doesn't mean that I should be let off the hook for it. That doesn't mean that my heart was in the wrong place also. Especially as Americans, we're fucking like narcissistic ego.
Imperialism beyond belief.
Westerner, this is like me, I, everything is about me. And that's how we've been raised. That's how we've been reared. That is what is important to us.
When you wake up in the morning, when you go to sleep at night, do you aim to be a better person, or do you just want to be an asshole? And be real with either one. Be real with either one, and like, it's all good, because individually, we cannot control it all. We can start from here and hope, and perhaps that like some people are built to do those building of bridges. Some people are here to hold this space in a different way. But damn, you be transparent, be real about it. And that's okay, because we're built differently.
But just make a decision.
Make a decision and be real about it, and don't complain when we come to level the playing field.
Exactly.
I mean burning it down.
The keeping up appearances that comes back to haunt everyone. That's the problem. That's what is catching, especially, I don't know, me in this moment, is just that, you know, it's great to watch people try, but you can tell what the intention is behind it. You know, it's you can see when folks are actually actively trying to be better, and when
they're self-serving as fuck.
That's right. And if it's selfish, if you're selfishly trying to help others, like, what are you doing? Just stop.
Yeah. That's the worst thing always, right? Those people who are just trying to get a
better.
critic's pick in the
Wait,
Times.
I think that reckoning is about to happen, and it's going to be a sight to behold when that reckoning comes through. Because I think we're still a little bit away from that. I think that like right now we're in a necessary moment of like of structure and like figuring out like what structurally is not working. But when we get to like it's going to be. I live for mess.
I appreciate this time, and
Yes.
I'm really grateful for this collection of beautiful souls. I am not grateful for this 7 o'clock because it's so exclusive, and I want to be able to honor essential workers who are primarily Black and Brown and Indigenous people, and all
hear
the
it, yeah.
nonsense hypocrisy within it. So that's happening. And I also want to say, for Reckoning, you know where to find me. And there's a record that I recently did a week ago.
The link
it's
is
on the
here.
internet.
This has been my favorite podcast I've had so far. I can certainly tell you that, by far. And I say that with just a little sadness because my friend Mariah Cameron isn't here right now. Michael's actually worked with Mariah. She's like my producer. Love her. But I wanted to thank you all for being here. So you could catch Christina at the Instagram right fucking here. And you can go see her monologue that she performed by Charlie Evan Simpson, whose house she is staying in right now, at the 24-Hour Plays Viral Monologue on IGTV. You can catch Michael Monroe on season 4, episode 6 of Insecure. You can catch A.A. Brenner's play The Wind Cries Mary at my benefit reading for New Alternatives for Pride and Black Lives Matter, and you can catch Johnny's play Rounds in that same cycle. Thank you guys so much for coming, and this has been such a rewarding conversation.